Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wine and Witchcraft. Tonight, we are talking all about magical record keeping. Brittany is rocking it out at a concert, so we are going to be co-hosted by Owlvine, and we have AB Witch Journal here. And the real question is, how many grimoires can I fit up my ass?
Come as you are, as you were, as I want you to be, as a friend, as an old enemy. Take your time, hurry up, the choice is yours, don't be late. Take a rest as a friend, as an old memory. Come doused in mud, soaked in bleach, as I want you to be, as a trend, as a friend, as an old.
Hello, everybody. Okay, those are the opening credits. Before we get started, as usual, let's go ahead and take a look and see who is in the chat. There's about 32 people here in the show so far. Good evening to you all. We hope you all have your drinks ready to go. We're going to have a lot of fun. Dreamtime Tarot's here. We have Debbie, the Smiling Hag. Who else is in the chat? TJ, the Eclectic Healing Witch. That is a long name, and I love it. Beanbag Hagwag is here. Trish. Okay, so to get started, let's talk a little bit about what we are drinking. AB, do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me well, by the way?
Yes, yes,
Perfect.
we can.
So right now, Fresca, I don't know. I like it. It's what is rolling. And because that's also how I roll, I don't know why I need to have a cold drink and a hot drink at the same time. So I'm also having my ginger tea with honey and lemon.
Okay.
Okay. We're trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they say in witchcraft or Wicca? It's all about balance. You got to have that balance.
It's
right?
all about
duality.
To hydrate, and the other one is if I'm coughing or I need to like clear the throat, hot drink.
Yeah.
Pretentious. No, just kidding.
Gotta sip the tea.
Yes.
A nice tea.
Shall I go next? I am super boring, you guys. You know that I'm on a health kick. So all I have in my little cup here is water. I'm sorry to say. I was going to think of like some cool like name to call it, but we got nothing. I got water. Okay. Justin.
Right. I am in Italy. I'm drinking Riscato Sweet Red. I don't even know where this is from, but that's what I'm drinking tonight. It's actually pretty good. I have to work tomorrow, so I had to make sure I got something that was low in alcohol percentage, and this is only 7%. So I'm gonna stay seated tonight in this chair. I hope that's the
we're
plan.
behaving.
Right, we're behaving as much as I possibly can. So we are excited to have AB on tonight. He did tell us that we are popping his cherry for a live.
Yeah, this is the first time that I do a live, so I'm very very excited. I'm going to be honest. Yeah.
Well, we're excited to have you here. Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody about your channel, kind of what you're doing, where they can find you?
So yes, so my name is Anibal, but typically I say, hey, just call me AB. It's easier. Everyone calls me AB. You can find me pretty much in Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube as well as AB Witch Journal. And pretty much the approach that I took with my social media is beginner. You're a beginner practitioner as me. I'm not even trying to teach. It's more like I'm showing my experience and what I'm doing right now. So I like to talk about books mostly. I like to make book reviews. You can actually see the evolution of my editing and all of that. I think that I even was skinnier and everything. I don't know.
We all have that experience.
Listen, I am living my best life. That's why I'm gaining weight. I cannot complain. But yeah, that's pretty much. I am going to dive more in my social media a little bit more often, and I do enjoy making quick spells, for beginners. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I could say that my practice, even though it's not brujeria tradicional, like traditional brujeria from South America, I do touch on that because I'm from Venezuela. So I like to keep that cultural approach to it, but from the perspective of a beginner, because in reality, I began 6 years ago in my witch practice.
Okay. Very cool. So in the description of this live, there is a link to his channel. It is there. So you guys can check it out. Please go and subscribe and like and love bomb him over there for sure. He would greatly
appreciate a lot of love. A lot of love. Everything is made with love. Yes.
So tonight we're talking all about magical record keeping. This is something that I think we all talk about, especially AB, like you were saying, as new practitioners, there's always kind of like this push for a book of shadows, everything to have and be a certain way. There's a certain aesthetic and expectation that we all put. So we wanted to go ahead and talk about that. That's what this whole episode is about. Who knows what else is going to fucking happen, but that's the goal of this episode. Okay. So Olivine, why don't you go ahead and get us started and with some of this historical, context, I guess you could say.
Stuff. Okay, so I did a little bit of research. As far as I can tell from my research, it seems that the first time magic was recorded was by, I think it's pronounced Osthanes, maybe, who was a Persian magician and astrologer. So it was around 480 BC that he first wrote down, his various things that he was writing down. So he was actually involved with King Xerxes as well. For anyone who knows their Bible, you may or may not be familiar with that name. Now, around that same time, it also seems that there was books or writings coming out of Chaldea as well. Again, I think that's how it's pronounced, which is a part of Babylonia. And then in the Mesopotamian region as well, and Iraq. And so they were sort of the first people to be writing anything down. And then later on, it really took off in AD times, so post-Jesus, in Egypt, and then further out from there. So that's where it began, in kind of that near Middle East kind of region. And then when we get to the medieval times, we see a lot of examples of European writings in this time. So there was the grimoires of that time, predominantly, I would say, are ceremonial magic in style. At least a lot of ceremonial magic is kind of based within those grimoires. So the most popular ones we have from that time are the Key of Solomon, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, and the Picatrix as well, which I do have a copy of here. So there are many different versions of this. Various authors will kind of translate and put their own things in. I've heard this is quite a good translation. So this is by John Michael Greer. For anyone who's interested, you can have a look at that. But I know that AB, you have quite a love for medieval grimoires. Could you let us know tell us about medieval grimoires.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so no, it's all good. And I, just to let everyone be aware, I'm not I'm a historian, so don't quote me on anything. Like, don't put me on any homework nor assignment. I'll don't for your own sake and for mine. But the in the medieval. And I always like to begin, if you have heard anything that I've said, like in podcasts or anywhere, I like to say that it's important to keep in consideration like the nuance aspect of magic and tradition and culture. And the cool thing about grimoires and magic per se is that as we keep reading and learning about it, the lines get very blurry between magic and religion and cultural aspects and tradition. And we can get to see that in medieval time, due to the expansion of Christianity, a lot of Christian elements were embedded in a lot of grimoires. And I love medieval grimoires, specifically, not necessarily the medieval period. I'm talking more about like the modern era, like the post-Renaissance, when we are getting all these different books like Cornelius Agrippa, the 3 books of occult philosophy. I love that book. And we can also talk a little bit more. And actually, I have a little note over here because names. We have the 3 books of occult philosophy, the Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum, which pretty much is a book that talks about demons. I love demonology. And we, in my culture in South America, a book that is very, very known is the Book of Saint Cyprian, which is actually the version that I have now is a translation of the translator. It was in Portuguese and all of that, and it's a recollection of stories. And I like to a lot about those different books. First than anything, it have a very, very solid Christian base, and Christian not necessarily as in religion, but Christian mythology, Jewish mythology. You can get to see a very similar structure because practically comes from the same idea of the structures of hell and the structure of the different hierarchies of demons and angels. So it's a very, very interesting background, and I feel that I like that a lot because I come from a Christian background. But my favorite for sure is the Book of Saint Cyprian because it's the one that is very utilized even until today in South America, Venezuela, Peru. So it's something that I really like. I'm not going to go far in deep into that topic because it's boring, it's history, and I don't know the years and dates. But I can definitely guarantee that grimoires are very, very interesting thing because, again, as we keep looking backward, we start asking questions like, okay, what is a grimoire? What is just a recollection of practices? Is the Bible a grimoire? What is a grimoire? What makes a grimoire and not just a textbook? And I love Sarah Mastros, and Sarah Mastros constantly says, hey, grimoire is just that, a textbook. But it seems like the word grimoire comes from grammar, from French, which pretty much is word. But also at the same time, we Latinos and also hoodoo practitioners, people from also Trinidad, Tobago, we utilize a lot of the Bible to do magic without necessarily belonging to Christianity or being part of Catholic elements. So could we say that the Bible is a grimoire?
I mean, I think the Bible is a grimoire, and it's funny. It's not funny, but it's interesting to look at historically Christian mysticism and Jewish mysticism. And when you look at that historically compared to modern day times, the religious aspect tries to distance itself from the magical elements that were there historically. And now it's so just religion based. Yes. And I mean, I think the Bible is the grimoire. I mean, I'm not a hoodoo practitioner, but I do incorporate elements in my practice. And it's because there is a comfortability there with Christian elements. And I grew up in a Christian cult, is what I call it. So
Yeah.
there's a comfortability there. There's also an act of blasphemy that is alluring to me, or I feel like I'm doing something I'm not supposed to.
Yes.
But I always find it very interesting when you know, you post something on socials and Christians get so angry that it's not magical. It's not a grimoire. It's a book about a man who comes back from the dead 3 days later. How is this not a grimoire? Like, I don't understand. We're talking about spirits and getting swallowed by whales. Like, if this isn't a grimoire, I don't know what is. Like, come on now. This is a magical book. I don't get it. Where is the confusion coming in at? I don't know.
Totally. Oh, yours is a prayer, but mine is a manifestation. What is the difference between those two? That yours is controlling like the power in society, and mine isn't. My practice is a minority, and yours isn't.
Correct. And that's the thing. The mysticism goes away when I think the magic is pulled to the religion can control and colonize. That's the whole purpose. Then to demonize any sort of minority, color, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and it's used as a weapon against people. And you can only do that if you take out the mysticism. Otherwise, you're in the group with all the freaks. You know what I mean? And I don't know, it's just kind of crazy to think about how the evolution of that is interesting to me.
Yeah. In my and even then when we and maybe I'm misunderstanding like the expression of mysticism, and again I keep going backwards, but I know that we're talking about grimoires, but we cannot talk about magic and even tracking the information, data, be able to record our practices. We cannot talk about magic without talking about religion, and we cannot talk about religion and magic without talking about cultures. And at the end of the day, the social element is going to be there. And I find interesting that you mentioned, it's taking away the mysticism. But I, for example, I came from a Christian Pentecostal background, and within the Pentecostal church, there was a lot of mysticism. There was a lot of divination through Bible, but they didn't call it like that. You were inspired by the spirit or whatever. A lot of talking, allegedly speaking in tongues. A lot of people falling in a state of euphoria, let's call it like that, to the point that they were shaking and falling and completely going into a state of ecstasy, I will say. But it's Christianity. And funnily, within witchcraft, historically speaking, we can see all of the same elements as well.
Literally.
Divination, ecstasis, as in, not the drug, dude. Like, you know what I mean? We can see all of this in witchcraft as well. But the difference is that, the witchcraft always was the minority, unless you were a dude that had a lot of money and had the opportunity to dedicate the life for witchcraft, or you were the the right hand of a king or emperor. And still something that I really love about a book that I read about that we were talking about Owen Davies, the book of the historical aspect of grimoire, is that he says that one, I love it. And I actually make the quote over here. Women have always been as important as men in witchcraft, but historically speaking, the most part of the documents were that we can have or found, the most part of them were written by men. And it's not because women were not important, it's because in society that men had that control and power over the practice itself because of the the social hierarchy. I didn't want to patriarchy. That's the reality. That's what it is. Yes. So I'm sorry. I'm nerding out. I love talking about this. So
we love
there
it.
You go.
No, we love it. Absolutely. I grew up in a very Baptist setting, so there was no mysticism. If you're familiar with Baptists, you know how they're fucking crazy, but in a different way. So there was no mysticism there. I always found it interesting. The action can be the same. I think it really correlates in whose name you're doing it in. As long as you're doing it in God's name or Jesus's name, and you can find some sort of verse to kind of solidify that, then it's okay. If you step outside of that realm, then it's a completely different story. And upholding women and women's stories, just it's usually a story to show why a woman is less than, or why she needs to repent. Yeah, something like that. And it just, I don't know, it fucked with me so much.
Yes.
Not about that life.
Yeah. It's their own interpretation of those verses, and also their
Right.
own interpretation of their own faith. Because again, Latinos, brujos and brujas, we call Jesus to do magic, and folk practitioners of Italy as well, then in Europe, and how many practices
Yes.
throughout history, Bible and Jesus were utilized to perform or
Well,
cast.
and that's the thing. I think it's, I don't think it's the deity. And I've said this before, and I know Alavine will echo this. It's not the deity. To me, I know people have a different perception and their own kind of personal gnosis on that.
Yes.
And hey, that's you do you. I just have never found the deity to be the problem. I find the followers to be the problem, and then the way that they want to interpret it. Yes, and the way they want to weaponize it. Because people weaponize witchcraft to
anything.
Yeah. Yes, anything you can weaponize. It's about the person, not necessarily the spirit you're working with, that you find the fault. That's just my take, anyway.
I totally agree. I definitely agree with that.
Sure. Babs. Okay, well, let's move on from medieval grimoires. That was such a good chat. Oh my god.
I just
interject at any moment, please. You have so much knowledge. I love it. So we're just gonna, to wrap this little historical bit up. After our medieval kind of times, there was definitely the Renaissance as well, which had, I guess, similar-ish vibes in terms of the content. And then we move into more modern day times when we get the term Book of Shadows. And this is Gerald Gardner, at least it was popularized by him. And this is very much more about, instead of a grimoire, which we will talk about sort of our feelings of the differences, but this seemed to be more of the personal, sacred record, rather than like, a more written up, this is how to do the thing. It was much more personal. These are my gnoses, these are my feelings, all that kind of stuff. So we find as we go into modern times, there is a mixture of the two. And I do find that interesting. Justin and I have been chatting about this a bit, about kind of how we feel we should have our grimoires or Book of Shadows, and like the pressure around that. These like, this is how we should do it, this is whatever. And I've found through doing this research, it is a mixture of the two. I think some people get caught up when they're actually trying to create their own grimoire. I need to record all of the information. I need to write down everything I'm learning. I need to have a book from A to Z of witchcraft that I've created myself. I think that's often the thought. Whereas with the Book of Shadows, again, it doesn't matter what the name is, but now it's more about, instead of just writing down the information that's already in a book, it can be a lot more helpful to write down your own kind of findings. And not to say, again, that grimoires in the past weren't that, because of course they were. But I think we're getting tripped up because we're trying to make these big, beautiful books.
Yes.
When we already have so much resource. So, okay, let's ask the audience. I saw one person say, but what do you guys call your record-keeping book? What are the terms you like? What are the names that you like? We have grimoire, Book of Shadows, Book of Mirrors, Magical Diary, Book of Light, which I saw someone in the chat actually uses that term. I saw Record of Shadows, Grimoire of Shadows, and Magical Journal as well. So I hadn't seen those ones before. For myself, I kind of go between Grimoire and Book of Shadows. I just kind of change between the two. What about you guys?
I don't call it anything.
Okay.
I love that.
Okay. So, through this conversation that we've had, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but ADD is a thing. So I feel like it's all bullshit. I'm just going to put that. I feel like it's all bullshit. I feel like our modern day understanding of what it is is just complete and utter bullshit. And we have been so influenced by society and what the expectation is that it should be. And I just think it's, for me, again, this is just my opinion, I think it's a complete waste of time to try to put that expectation on yourself as though you're going to have some practical magic book or some charmed book, and you're copying stuff out of a book into a book. To me, the most important aspect isn't even, again, just my own personal opinion, isn't even necessarily recording the spells, but more so recording the outcome or the experience of what you're doing. Because, you know, no situation is ever going to be the same. So the outcome is typically going to be different. You know, if I'm going to use a money spell in this situation, you know, 3 months down the road, the situation may be different. And I'm also chaotic in that way. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to the altar and I'm pulling whatever I want. I ain't got time to write this shit down. But I think,
I love that.
I think, you know what I mean? I also think what comes into play is when you talk about it in a historical manner, the tie between the marriage between religion and spirituality, magic, was more closely aligned than it is now. So I think we're trying to achieve something that we don't actually do in modern day times. And I think that's part of the reason why we get tripped up so easily, is we're expecting to kind of create our own dogma, maybe in a way, an expectation of how it's supposed to be. And one of the reasons why I think so many people come to magic outside of, you know, society and culture is to kind of enact their own ability to create change, right? To get in touch with their own power. So there isn't really a necessity or a need to stick to a formula. Do you know what I mean? That's my opinion. And for me, I write notes in my phone. So I have the notes app on my iPhone, and that's what I type shit in. Or I put a voice recording, something like that, and I'm like, done, got it, good to go.
And it works. And it works for you. That's
right.
That's I loved and sorry for jumping in, but I love that chaos. I'm a Libra, so she is a devil's advocate. Okay, let's begin there. So I'm going to be, you know, I go with Owlbine. I agree, but I also think that Justin is right, and I feel that I fluctuate between both. And I'm going to show you something. In here, I have two books that obviously, because of how my practice works, they are in my altar. I don't have to show them. But these are my grimoires. And I also have on my phone. So I typically call my grimoire to my actual book that is on my altar, because in my practice, the book is magical. The book is one of the tools that I utilize for my spells, for my casting, for my rituals. And in the same way that some witches, they have their crystals, their wand, their chalices, cauldron, according to the practice, you know, the tool changes. In mine, my book is one of my tools. And you rarely will see me casting without the book open. So that is something, you know, that I'm sharing, that I think that I can share without sharing too much. On the other hand, I am as you can notice, a journal collectionist, actually a Bewitched journal. I wanted to say something along the lines a Bewitched grimoire, but it was too pretentious and too long, and nobody was going to search for that. It doesn't do anything for search engine optimization, so it was like grimoire is out. But yeah, I have my Notion app where I type down stuff. I have my Apple app. I have my notebooks. I have one where I write my tarot readings, because I like to see pattern recognition. I want to see where the pattern is in my readings. I will never tell anyone how to read tarot beyond. Well, that is a lie. I will always say a symbol is a symbol, and you cannot go beyond the symbol. But in your experience, when this symbol appears, what does that mean for you?
Yeah.
You know, because I'm seeing a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, the Three of Swords is happiness." No, bullshit. It's grief. You're getting but beyond. I do have multiple books, and I do utilize multiple type of books. In the same way as you, sometimes I don't type anything, but in my altar, I do utilize my grimoire, the grimoire, and I do not subscribe to just one name, but typically the one that I utilize is Grimoire because I feel that it fits with me. However, it is important to take in consideration respecting what Justin said. In this time, maybe writing a grimoire is not as important in the past, because in the past we need to take in consideration that most part of the people didn't know how to read or write. So writing and reading was a very small populace. So imagine someone that hasn't had the experience to reading or writing and see this book. Oh my God, this is so mysterious. I have no opportunity. I don't understand what's happening there. That's actually the word grammar. It means something that I cannot understand, but beyond. And for many cultures, talking and writing is actually an act of magic. And again, Sarah Mastros, with her most recent book, the Planetary Magic book, the Planetary Sigils of Solomon in Magic. In that book, you are meant to create a book that will be a tool. And you don't actually need to do much more than just open the book, turn it on, and utilize a sigil for the spell that you're looking to do, which is mind-blowing. So for people that are animistic, like me, because I think that everything has a spirit, you can utilize your books to do magic without having to do a super performative ritual. But I also believe in the chaos of existence and life. And I do think that sometimes you're writing something on a paper and burning it. That's it. That shit is done. I'm getting my money. I don't care about fucking anything. That's it. And that also works. So what I will say is I invite everyone to check what worked for you. Don't fall for anyone's bullshit. Practice everything. Check what fits and get rid of the rest. That's how I roll.
That is like preach. Absolutely. I love that. Like, I love that you have your grimoire on your altar, and then it's just a fucking powerful tool in and of itself. I so feel that as well. I just wanted to segue into kind of talking about like how to keep the records, because you were showing like these are my notebooks, and I've tried a few different ways. So I started off with this book here. So as you guys know, my magical name is Owl Vine. So I've got, you can't see, but it's a little wax owl and then vines. This is some like old Bible book, right? And then I just went in, and so these are what the pages look like. I was collecting, things, but I actually gessoed over them, and then can you guys see me? And created like, pages, and like did this whole thing. I loved it, but it didn't work for me. Right. I was just like, because I like things to be organized. And then I was like, am I putting information? I don't really know what I'm doing this. So I put that aside. Someone made me an incredible folder, which I thought this is going to be the way to do it. Right. So I have my different sections in here. I made it all beautiful. And then I would just write, elsewhere, and then pull out the things and put it in here. But then I was like, then I have to write neatly all the time. And like, it was still too much. So now what I do, I, like you, AB, have a collection of notebooks, and I use these 5 subject ones so that I can break them up. And I've got like 5 or 6 of these now. And for me, like most of the time, I'm going to tell you guys, most of the time, I don't record my spells, because a lot of the time, like I just want to do the thing. Sometimes I do, and it is really helpful. But what I mostly use mine for is recording formulas, recipes, bits of information. Okay, if I find it out in the ether, if I don't have like the book right there, easy for me, write all that down. I write quotes, especially I record spells if they're from someone else. So if I see someone sharing a spell, I'm like, oh, I love that. Like, I'm going to write that down. So I've got all kinds of things like that in here. So what was the point of me telling you that? Oh yeah, so you were talking about different ways to do it. So I think one of the kind of most common ways, most aesthetically pleasing maybe, is like hardback books, or like those beautiful journals that people buy. But I want to really talk about this thing, because I think a lot of people trip themselves like that. Beautiful. People trip themselves up with beautiful books like that, because they buy a beautiful book and then they say, now everything that goes in it needs to be perfect. I need to make this gorgeous book. The whole book needs to be beautiful. And you know what? Sometimes they never pick up the book, or sometimes, like me, they'll do a couple of pages and then they're done.
Yeah.
So like AB said, you've got to find what works for you. And there's so many different ways. So the folders, the binders, notebooks, sketchbooks, digital book of shadows. So I looked into this because I was like, okay, I've heard this a lot. People are doing this. How do we do this? So I saw some people have a Discord server, so a private Discord server, and they'll put all their stuff in there. Instagram and Facebook. Some people will create like a page or a group, whatever, and they put all their stuff in there. OneNote, Evernote, all those kinds of note apps that you guys were talking about, and even Google Docs. So I thought that was really interesting, and obviously private folders on computers and stuff like that. So, and then there's grimoire apps. I didn't know this was a thing. Oh. I had a little look, but the ones that I found were like someone putting up information that you could then save this or that. So it wasn't creating your own personal one. But I think that option might also be out there. I just didn't have enough time to have a look. And then there's, like you said, Justin, audio. A lot of people that works for them, creating audio, especially for spells, I think. Because, again, a lot of us, we're putting in so much energy to our actual spell work. When you're done, you're like, I want to sit down and write step 1, step 2, step, doing audio is really good. Some people actually record their spells on video as well, which I thought was really cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've done that for the channel, for the show. We've done that. You know, you want to do a protection or something like that, and you can put it up on your channel. Yeah. Someone out, Honeypaw was saying she's a digi whore, and I feel the same way. And you know, when I first started getting into witchcraft, I went out and bought this. This is so embarrassing to say. It was like $500 something. This fucking leather bound fucking shit. Had all the information in it, right? And then there were blank pages in the back. I never picked the bitch up. Okay? Never picked it up. Threw the shit away. It was huge, like a fucking Charmed, right? It had a triquetra on it and everything. Like the fakery was real. And like I'm trying to take the bitch to the altar. I'm like, fuck this shit. Like, goddamn, I cannot with this. Okay, this is too much. And I just couldn't. And I I have a couple of things going through my head. Okay, number one, tarot.
Obsessed.
Tarot. I record my tarot readings. I take a picture of it. Bam, done. I do, honey.
That's it. That's it.
I gotta work. I gotta eat. I gotta sleep. I ain't got time to be.
You know what I just started doing with that? Because I do that too, just a photo. But I've actually started adding in the question on top of the because I kind of read weird. Like I'll do 3 cards here, 2 cards here, 5 here, whatever.
Yes.
So I just put a little thing so then I actually know what it is. That's been really helpful.
Yes, that is super helpful to do that. I don't do that, but that would be helpful. That would be helpful. I typically go through and I'm like, okay, these like 6 pictures, the tower keeps showing up. It's time to just move on to the other world because my life is a goddamn disaster. But so I do that. And then I also wanted to touch on something else, which I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I feel like for me, what has influenced my, like, having no desire to sit there and like write it out is, you know, in modern day times, you can go down to the fucking Barnes and Nobles, honey, and pick up a witchcraft book. Like, why? I just like, I'm going to sit here and write what basil stands for. I don't give a fuck about basil anymore. I'm over it. I have all these books that tell me about basil. Why do I need to copy and paste? I don't. No. I spent money on these books. They shouldn't collect dust. So why not open them up and use them? And I like to highlight, you know, pig nose, pig ear, cow ear. What is it? Dog ear. Dog ear.
Pig nose, dog ear.
Dog ears.
Spanish ear. I have no idea. I have no idea what that is.
You know when you're like you don't want to lose the page, so you like fold the corner down.
Oh, that's how it's said in English. Dumb bitch.
I couldn't remember. I thought I was thinking pig ear. It's dog ear.
I utilize like a bunch of these just to keep tabs of where their nice info is.
Yes.
And see, notice I have like a ton because I keep going through them.
But I don't know. I just feel like also with like the mass production of information that's being produced, and I mean, new books are coming out fucking every single hour by authors that don't even exist. That why not go ahead and purchase them, you know what I mean? And you have the information. So for me, that's one of the things where I'm like, okay, I don't need to record all this. I just need to record my own personal experience. That's it. Spirit communication, dreams. I think it is beneficial to look back and be able to have that. But outside of that, what's the point?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that too. And well, let's talk about what they're used for then, right? Because I think that typical idea is I've got to record all the information that I learn, which can be helpful for study purposes, but can be incredibly fucking stressful when you need to create a beautiful book with all that information in it. Yeah. So what I've seen people do, and you guys let me know what you do in the chat as well. Yes, no, whatever. So recording spells and rituals. That was the first one. So yes, no. Okay. Recording formulas, recipes, things that you make. I tend to do this a lot because I really love making my own, oils and incenses and all that kind of stuff. Some people are not into that. Divination results, we spoke about that, recording all that. So helpful because like I tend to lean away from that as well. Like I can't be bothered, which is why the phone trick with actually adding in the little questions is helpful. But it's so helpful to look back on, like, and it really does help you grow as a practitioner, because not only does it help you in terms of the insights that you've gotten, but it also helps you to develop your Bible of symbology, if you will. So that's what you were talking about earlier. So like when you see a heart with a sword through it, it has particular meanings based on what people say, but what do you feel about that? And that will sort of get you that build up that for you, so that when you do your own divination, it's just so much more robust. Another great thing to do is record your beliefs, spiritual wanderings, that kind of stuff, because all of us go through a process, right? Like all of us reach points in our practice where we're like, we don't know who we are anymore, or our practice totally changes or whatever. And it's so beautiful to be able to look back at where you started. And it's actually, you wouldn't think so, but it can really help you where you're at in your practice later as well, to kind of see all that stuff. Recording incantations, chants, spirit summoning, which is what a lot of old grimoires have. Magical quotes. I mentioned this earlier. I love to collect quotes just in general, but like putting in those quotes, adding those, any thoughts, journaling, that tends to be in the Book of Mirrors type of thing. And then there's of course magical study, which I think is predominantly what people think of it for, and correspondences and that kind of stuff. So I mean, you guys kind of already mentioned it. Is there anything else that you record in your magical books / phone?
Actually, yes. But I will say that it depends of the type. Again, and if I didn't explain it, like typically I have multiple books because typically one book will not have it all. Unless it's a book as the one that I mentioned that I have on my altar, that the book is the spell. The book is alive. By all means, the book is fucking alive. The book is a spirit. Yeah. And I'm working with them. Or I could say that it's an extension of myself. What? Tomato. Depending on a book. I have a book where I write down my experiences with plants, another one for tarot. If you're practicing sex magic and you want to actually be able to record the results, I love Jason Miller and also Shawon Koo, because they typically, when they are teaching magic, they say, hey, your spells cannot be half done. Or it worked or it didn't. So it is important that you keep track of that if you see your magic in a scientific approach. So if you do practice magic or you utilize certain sexual elements in your practice, it is important to also have a sex journal-ish type of thing. And there is a book, I don't remember, let me see. I have a few sex magic ones, but I don't remember the name. I will share it with you later, and I don't know, I'll make a post or something. But it does recommend to keep a track of that as well.
Yes, we love a good sex journal.
We love that. We love that. Blessed. Bless the Lord. Bless the Lord day. Bless the goddess. Hallelujah.
Bless the goddess.
Bless them all. Every single one of them.
All the things.
All of them. All of them.
Well, I think too, for me, I mean, and this is probably like maybe a thought process I have to get away from, but I know coming into the craft, and it's kind of a viewpoint that I've held on to is I feel like for me and maybe other people, I always approach it in an aspect of legacy because in society and even like in this space, a lot of times you think about, you know, passing that on. It's a legacy, you know, and it has to be perfect. It has to be all of these things. I don't know. I just don't see the point in it. But I do record stuff. I guess I'm just lazy. I guess that's what it is.
But this is the thing. It works. It works for you.
It does
And
work.
This is what I keep going back. And sorry that I keep jumping onto that. But if your
So
magic work like that, if you keep track on your own way, also for the ADHD girlies like me, if you cannot handle having multiple books, multiple track it in the way that it works for you. Also, for those that utilize a lot of digital elements, there is an app called Notion, which I love, that pretty much you can create like your own grimoire book, track your practices, and it's like a Wikipedia type of thing. You can create multiple pages, and it's
Oh,
insane. It will rock your
cool.
world, and it's free. So,
what was it
Notion.
called again?
Notion. 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 I think. Oh,
Oh yeah, we got it in. Yeah, someone's like, love
Yeah.
Notion.
Well, and
Notion,
too, like,
yes.
I think Shireen, like you were saying, it's looking back on my channel, even when you see, you know, certain workings that I've shared or thought processes that I've shared, and then you go back and you can even see the growth through that. You know, if you, depending on what type of content you make, what kind of content you share, it is interesting and cool to be able to see that and to see how your growth changes. And really to see how your practice changes throughout the years. I know from the beginning to now, I was much more organized. And I know Ivy the Occultist was talking about this earlier in the chat, is in the beginning, I was very adamant about remembering everything, right? Remembering what everything's used for, the tools and everything, which I think is important when you want to build a foundation. Like you want to know why you're choosing to do certain things, I think. But as time has gone on, I am very much chaotic about the way that I do stuff. And I'm also a creature of habit. Like I have a certain set of things that I like to do because I know that it works for me. And I'm like, until I get the notion, I'm sticking to it. I'll use coffee to hex a bitch and whatever else I want to do. Okay, honey, it works in every scenario.
I love that. And that's why my witch practice began with Tumblr. I was a Tumblr girly like that too. And Tumblr was amazing because I pretty much it was reposting whatever I feel that it fit with what I believe. And I used to just backtrack and see, okay, this works, this does, and this works, this doesn't, and just delete. But as you mentioned, and I think that I keep latching onto that, the habit aspect, what works for you. I do find important to record my experience. I do find important writing down when the spell needs it, because I do find in my experience, and this is UPG, I will never come to you as people appears in social media. Well, if you utilize eggshells, you cannot use it to break hexes. Bullshit by two. If it works for you, it works. Like, I'm not going to also say, I'm not going to go and break people's belief system, but if in my system works and I'm showing you, hey, it worked because here is the test, the trial, and the result, you cannot say to me that it doesn't work. All right.
Yes.
So that on that side. But as I mentioned, in my practice, I am lazy as well. Sometimes I have multiple books because I don't want to keep like just one, or I have multiple apps, and simply I just save on TikTok, on YouTube, or Instagram, or whatever. But at the same time, there are spells where I have to sit down, I have to open a circle, I have to write down a triangle, I have to use the blessed ink, I have to write down the 30 names of gods and whatever. And and that particular ritual requires me to fast for that day, and I have to wash my face and my body and whatever, and the cool thing about magic is that you don't have to do the spell if you don't want to. You can utilize a simpler version that fits with your practice. It will work probably the same without you having to stop eating for a day or whatever and move on. And just
Right.
because someone else does it doesn't mean that you have to. And that is what I love about magic. There is room for everyone, but you need to go through the process to see what sticks.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, you will never know. And if you, like me, that ADHD girly again, I it's terrible. It's terrible, that type of rituals. It's terrible, that type of spells. But I like it because I went through it and it was like, oh, it worked. I will keep doing it. I will have to stop for eating for a day to do the spell. Fuck it. I guess I need the money. I need, you know what I mean? If it works, it works. That's my mentality.
If it works,
if
it works.
Yeah.
It works.
I think
Well,
a lot of us need to like really be on that a lot more. I think like, and I really feel like our generation maybe is very much there. Like I think a lot of people actually, you know what it is? I think it's anyone that's had experience for any length of time in magic, because you're like you said, you can write the thing down, burn it, you're done. Like you can do the simplest magic and it works, and the complex magic works as well. It's like finding where you're at, what fits with your personality. That's what I love, like you said, about magic. It's so unique, and we have so many resources now where we can learn all these different ways of practicing. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, you know, we each have our own. I equate everything to like approaching deity or saint work. Like everyone has their own energetic signature or whatever you want to call it. And everybody fits in the puzzle differently.
Yes.
So it doesn't need to necessarily be the same for everybody. Like there's more than one route to the finish line to get there. And also I feel like there is no set dogma, particularly when it comes to modern day magic. So why try to convince somebody of something that is completely irrelevant? Like if I watch something or see you do something that I think is bullshit, okay, but if it works and you're getting it, good for you. It ain't for me.
Good for you.
And I've used this example before with Saint work, and Alvine's gonna laugh. Like I used her working for Saint Expedite. It didn't do shit for me. It did not work. And I told her that. And I told her that. I said, you are the fakest bitch I've ever met. You don't know how to move magic. You're a piece of shit. You're a fraud. And I'm calling you out publicly. This shit didn't fucking work. And she was like, sorry, it worked for me.
Expedite their libations and offerings before and after?
Right. I'm like, this, because she does it differently than I do. So I was like, okay, I've never had any issues with getting results. So I was like, okay, let me try this. This is different.
It didn't work.
Didn't work. I was like, this is bullshit. I'm going back to the way that I do it. But, you know, it's all relationship based, you know, and how you relate to it. And it even goes back to what you were saying about the Three of Swords and like someone saying it's a love card. You know, it's the symbolism and perspective is always from one's own lived experience. You know, when you come to something, you bring all of your previous experience, religious trauma, whatever it is, to that new situation, and you're going to see it through that lens. And only through new experiences is that going to change, or is that going to be more solidified. You know, the only way to figure it out is just to play and have fun. I feel like people are having fun now, but there's still that element of I don't know, like trigger word gatekeeping. I don't know that that's the right term, but there's like,
you know what the word is? I wrote this down and I think this is the word: expectation.
Yeah, that could be of what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like a mold. Like this isn't a place where you need to fit into a mold. There should be just an open field where we all frolic naked and we're all having fun, and you find out what you like, and that's what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I on my end, because I tread within witchcraft as a minority, even though I am a man or a man-presenting person. Well, yes, even though I utilize he/they pronouns, because even though I present myself as a man, I do not necessarily feel that I fit within the society perception of masculinity. So non-binary-ish, and I say ish because I'm also figuring out that aspect of myself, and nobody's gonna tell me who I am. So I throw hands. So let's begin there. Nobody will tell me what my gender is. I throw hands. But even though I present myself as a man, I am okay. I'm a gay person in this country, immigrant. I am from South America, and I love how people utilize in this side of the continent the word gatekeeping and close practices and so much. There is such a conversation about that topic that is not necessarily related today, but what I like to say always is that I thread around that aspect with such as commodity because I'm an immigrant, and I am from the South, and the culture in Venezuela, we are a mix of Spanish natives from that area, Africans brought from redundantly from Africa, and the experiences of my society and the way of how Venezuela came to be is very different from how they were here in the North. And magic is for everyone. And that's why I keep saying there are 10,000 ways to do a spell. And magic is for everyone, but culture is where the circumstance get historical, it gets nuanced, it gets delicate. And I want to take advantage of what I mentioned. Do you want to sit down in the ritual, fasting, drawing the symbols, utilizing 10 different names of God? Or do you just want to write down the number, burn the fucking bay leaf, and that's it, you got the money? So I bring this example in the sense of you have so many places from where you can draw information in a cultural, ethical way, and also in a very unethical way. I love Wicca, and I've learned so much from Wicca, and I utilize many Wiccan elements in my practice, even though I'm not Wiccan myself. I would love to meet with a Wiccan coven and get to hear more about the history and their background. But we are aware of certain elements of Wicca were roughly taken from cultures without understanding the cultural background of that. So all these diatribe to say, you can be that person that could utilize a tool, a resource, and a ritual ethically sourced, by a person that has experience sitting down and be part of the conversation and learning, or be like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to take this word. I don't know what it means. I don't know what it's for. I don't know how to write it, but it's there because information is free. So you can decide how to do it. You can see if it works. But at the end of the day, and bless the internet and this type of conversation, three people from two different backgrounds with three different perspectives of witchcraft, we are talking about the same shit and we get along just fine. There is space for everyone, dude. There is information and magic for everyone, and that's what I love about this. We don't have to make it like Christianity, that they were like, oh, well, these are mine. I'm right. Everyone is fucking right and wrong at the same time. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Good. Love that energy.
So true.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Hello, Mr. T. You're supposed to be at a concert. What are you doing? Yes. I agree with that. And I think it gets very convoluted. Like, just to build on that a little bit, it does get so, as the melting pot turns and the internet feeds just information, any information as fact, it definitely gets very convoluted and the nuance is completely lost. The respect is completely lost. And there's so many people, and I'm so glad you said that. And Alvine and I have had these conversations so much with Brittany is, people say they don't like Wicca, they hate Wicca, they don't do anything with Wicca, and then they post a video and it's like, okay, that's what you're doing.
Oh,
like,
so you are opening a fucking circle? Dude.
Oh, right. Hello, where do you think it came from?
I'm not saying that that comes from Wicca. The opening
Right.
circle is beyond that, but who trademarked, who copyrighted it?
Correct.
Who taught it? Who opened it to everyone? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And even circling back, Wicca really did popularize this look at a book of shadows and what a book of shadow is. And a lot of people reference Charmed, especially our generation and age, is so we all know it, right? And they're witches, but you see a lot of elements within even that space that are, they're not necessarily witchcraft. They're more Wicca. It's kind of like interchangeable.
The first freaking episode of Charmed is a lady doing a Wicca ritual.
Right.
And then she fucking get killed, but beyond. It's there's a lot. And I love talking about nuance, and I'm sorry, I keep jumping onto this, but nuance is very important. And we talk in social media, a lot of kids mention it, media literacy, the importance of being able to read and understand what you are reading. I like to talk about hermeneutics, which is pretty much the art of interpreting, interpretation. When you're reading something, you have to read who wrote it, if you can find it, to who that was written for, when it was written, the social context of when that book was written, or letter, or whatever, the Bible, whichever book, anything that you're reading, you have to understand the context, what was happening around that area. And the nuanced conversation with Wicca is that many current Wicca practitioners are breaking away from these, are admitting and accepting, hey, this is the reality of how Wicca came to be. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a religion that can be utilized for good and for growth and for magic as it now. I don't subscribe to the threefold law, but bless if you do. It's your practice. It feels with your moral, sweet. But the reality is that thanks to Wicca, a group that practically claimed from a what man with a lot of social prestige,
right,
witchcraft came to be normalized,
right,
in this society, in this era. And I'm not saying, okay, cool, I support everything or I agree with what you did, but one thing came to be, and now Wicca and then posteriori witchcraft started being normalized, and now we can sit here and discuss it without fearing that we're going to fucking get burned on the stake or whatever.
Yeah.
So is a nuanced circumstance, but yeah, reality, life, it's not black or white. It's a scale of grays, and thanks to this historical circumstance, here we are. I'm not going to say that thanks to Wicca, all the witches are out there. And witchcraft itself is a topic that is so heavy. Again, it's hard to define, see the line between magic and religion and spirituality and all of that. But at this point of my life, 30 years old, and every day reading more and more, I cannot just go and be like, yeah, I fucking hate this. No, dude, no, just read it. Make your opinion. It's valid, but there are, yeah, that on that.
I think that's definitely a way to like cut off your own nose in spite of your face. I think that's how they say it, or whatever. Like just going, oh, I don't like that person because they clearly weren't a good person or whatever. There's a lot of examples. I'm thinking as well of Aleister Crowley, right? Because he's someone that I'm sort of looking more into now. He's a great example.
That was a character.
There's a character. It's character. You can decide not to be involved with that if you want, and you're allowed to make that decision. But there's so much
deny the influence.
that too. Yeah. Like there's so these men in particular have so much like the tendrils of what they have given us is through like our society. Like Aleister Crowley particularly, it's not just magic, it's so many other areas, and it's like not going into that is, I don't know, it's just a way to cut yourself off from that. But again, I do understand that personal feeling or whatever, but if it's something people can kind of get past a little, there's nuggets of wisdom. Like you don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just because someone is bad doesn't mean that their information isn't good.
Well, and two, I think also if you're looking into, this was a conversation that happened in the community, I don't know, a couple months ago, and there was some tea, honey, but it's also, I forget what the saying is, but you don't always want to surround yourself by people who agree with you or people who you agree with. Like it is good sometimes to challenge your own beliefs, right? And be like, okay, let me just look and see what this is about. Yeah, this is fucking bullshit. Or, oh, I don't agree with you, but I guess I can kind of see how you came to that conclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always an opportunity, again, to solidify your beliefs or to make you question what you believe, whether that's about magical recordings or magical record keeping, spirit communication, religion, regardless of what it is always good to challenge what you believe and in many ways understand why you believe what you believe. And that was something that I struggled with, coming out of full-fledged Christianity is,
Yes.
do I believe it because I believe it? Or do I believe it because it's all I knew? Like, those are two very different things.
Drag me.
Right. You have to, if that's the only experience you've ever had,
Yeah.
do you believe it? And
Yes.
if you believe it, it also doesn't necessarily make it true
Yes.
in many circumstances. So that's always something to be aware of. And obviously, there's figureheads historically and even in modern times that it's like, okay, you're a toxic person. But again, there is always stuff to pull from that. Like, be a greedy bitch. Okay, I'm going to leave the shit here, but I'm going to take what I want. And I mean, that really is, for good or bad, that is really the mentality of our generation and the generations younger than us. It's
Totally.
like, I'm going to take what I can and I'm going to leave what I don't.
Yes.
And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, as long as you understand why you're doing it, where it comes from, and how you can incorporate it appropriately is the key.
Yeah. I, in my practice, and it's my practice, and it's not a dogma. This is not a church. Like, my mindset is, my line is human rights. We can have different opinions about, and this is something that I saw on TikTok or Tumblr. I don't know. Like, we can have different opinions about pizza toppings, but not fucking human rights. I draw the line in human rights. I draw the line in respect towards gender, toward women, toward non-binary, towards trans community. I draw the line. I will never accept, like, and it's funny because within Wicca, something that is very common is the ideal of the different gender practices and all of that. And not only Wiccan, in many traditions, even in South America. And that was fucking cool for the first century. Not now. I don't have to believe that. I might understand it. Let me interpret it. Let me digest it. Okay, how do I bring that information to the 21st century when we are aware that, thanks to science, thanks to evolution, thanks to the growth of knowledge, we know that gender is more complex than just the organs that you were born with, and how these knowledge, factual knowledge, affect my magic. It's such an interesting topic. I had the opportunity to read a book called Conjuring the Calabash. And Conjuring the Calabash is a book written for women, practically. No, it's for women. And the author says it. And I had the opportunity to speak with Mawia Bomani, the author of the book. And I told her, in my experience, this is a very interesting book because I am man presenting. I don't fit with the and man presenting definitely towards non-binary aspect, but I don't feel myself as a woman. How do I connect with that divine feminine within this book? And pretty much the response was, that's your challenge. This is the way that you connect with the divine feminine. How do you understand what woman goes through in society, put on her shoes, and based on that, try to, grow your personal divine feminine experience. See where that takes you without betraying your persona, without betraying your identity. And I do feel that if you are in a play, you practicing magic, witchcraft, I feel that every single day you are going to find a way to keep crossing, in the same way that you mentioned the side of blasphemy. Like, there is a blasphemy element with practicing witchcraft with the Bible. I think that we also, as practitioners, we are invited to push a little bit forward, and also to put ourselves in a little bit of discomfort to grow, to learn, and to improve our magic. How can I connect with the divine feminine if I'm not thinking based on the gender perception of society, the divine feminine goes through in this world? it's a very interesting topic, and it's very personal, and I will never indicate you how to feel, but that book was amazing. Conjuring the Calabash by Mawia Bomani. Insane good.
I love that. What a great example as well, because I think there's a lot of this kind of talk happening now, but where people are like, we need all of the resources to reflect where we're at now, right? I disagree with that, because I think, like you said, you can pull from wherever. You don't have to. I do understand, like, being represented in a book or whatever, in a resource, like that feels really good. You're like, okay, I feel seen.
Yeah.
This is relating to me easily or whatever. But it doesn't need to be that way. Like you said, you can have your own experience with whatever the resource is which is what you should do. Like, even if it's a book that doesn't, it doesn't acknowledge you as a person, as your culture, or whoever, whatever it is, you can always take and make it your own, take the parts. Because I don't think, probably all of us would agree, I don't think I've ever read a witchy book where I agree with everything written in there. Like, there's always something I'm like, Never. So take what works, leave the rest, release that, like, that need for everything to be a perfect reflection of yourself, and just take those parts, because we're all so unique. And again, that's what we're saying we love about witchcraft is, like, every single witch, it doesn't matter who you talk to and whatever other names they use, they're all going to be different. Like, there's all unique things. Even if they're in a coven, they're all going to have their own ways of practicing and doing things. And we can celebrate that by, like, taking in all these different things and making them our own, and then sharing, this is how, as a queer person or whatever, I made this, my understanding of this, I put that filter on. Here's my new gnosis for you. Or whatever.
Love that.
100%. I mean, I know for me leaving, for me growing up in Christianity, there was no female representation. So that's what I was most excited about. And I did too. I've always felt pulled to the divine feminine. Always. It's something that I always felt lacking. And I just gravitate towards women because I think they're the superior gender. That's just me personally. Obviously. Obviously. I mean, that's just me. Like, I'm a feminist in that way. I'm the bad feminist. I do feel like women are superior. I'm not a true feminist. And that's just what I love. But I also, like, Alvine was saying, like we've been saying this whole episode, really is, that also is probably heavily rooted in my experience as a child and feeling so deprived of that space, right? That space. And I remember when I lived my life as female presenting for about 7 years. And I was on YouTube at the time, and so many people were telling me I was wrong, like that I couldn't do this, couldn't be here. So much hatred about that. And I'm like, but what about my spirit? What's the difference?
Why don't you mind your business? No.
Exactly. No one asked your fucking opinion.
Well, are you paying their bills or whatever? Like, mind your business. No.
Like,
if you're not fucking me or paying for my bills, we don't need to hear it.
It's so true. It's funny though how those things creep into a community that's made up of, the disenfranchised majority of the time. I think most people in the community are women, are people of color, or queer in some way. And it still kind of baffles me when there are people who still want to push against that. I'm like, read the room, read the neighborhood. This is not the space for, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand.
Sister, what's the problem? Like,
yeah, in my head is simply the whole circumstance of, and I think that does definitely it does fit well with how your magic. No, you know what? Sorry, let me recapitulate. I will invite everyone to experiment something, and not necessarily creating a grimoire. I want you to ask in your book, which sometimes this is very related to shadow work, and a lot of people talk about shadow work too easily without understanding what that is. I want you to question your identity, and I want you to question who you are based on who do you define yourself to be, and based on who the society asks you to be. And I think, and I particularly think that witchcraft is inherently queer, because typically many witch and many spiritual practitioners, we are dealing with these questions from the very beginning. Who am I that is not told to me by society?
Right.
Who am I that is not told to me based on what organs my body has? Who am I based on who do I feel that I am, instead of what the congregation says I am? And it's really cool that within the witch community, many queer people is there, because we already are asking ourselves those questions since we are kids, and we are at church, and we are in the different spaces in society. So I'm not going to say we're in a step ahead, but in reality, in self-awareness, we are already dealing with that since a young age. And I had the opportunity, again, I keep quoting books, but I really like to read. And this is not a book of witchcraft, but it's I don't remember well the name in English. I read it in Spanish. It's something along the lines of The House of Crystal or The Glass House or something like that. It's a sci-fi book where the characters have the opportunity to alter their features, completely alter their appearance and their genes with computers, to the point that your identity is not based on what your body says that you are. Your identity is your memories, your experiences. And because everyone has the opportunity to alter themselves, everyone can experience childbirth, having a female presenting body, masculine presenting body, and not only in the sense of humanity. We're talking about different races, races as in aliens, not human race. Like there is one human race. We're talking about different beings throughout the universe. And when I read that book, I had to sit down and ask myself that question. If I had the opportunity to do this, who is Aníbal? And I guarantee you that your magic will change a lot. Even if it's just, no, I'm not going to say that your rituals will change, but your perception, the way that you perceive universe and life around you will change. Because you will understand that you are more than your body. And that is everything. Keep it in your book. Ask those questions if you can in your first page. And you will see how your practice will evolve. I guarantee you. There's no way that you, arguing with that question or asking yourself that question, you will be the same person. Never. But you have to put yourself in that character. So I say this because the divine feminine, the masculine, the divine masculine, the divine, we are still dividing so much of the spirit by genders instead of just connecting with divinity itself. It's a lot. I'm going all over the place.
We love it. Such a good chat. Everyone's loving the chat too. Yeah. Everyone in the chat. Yes. So good.
Yes.
It's the silence.
See what everyone's written.
Checking in with the chat.
And I'm sorry that my rambling ADHD.
Oh no, do not apologize. We love it.
Yes, I've learned a lot. I'm going to do that myself too. I've written it down, so I'm definitely gonna. I think that's one of those things that you can always revisit too, right? Because we change, we evolve always. And some people get stuck too. They'll be like, sometimes you finally figure out your tidy little box, but then you always change, and then you're like, okay.
It's so good to have your box. It's good to feel nice in your box.
Feels nice.
It's good to have it as long as you don't make anyone put themselves in your box.
Yes. And as long as you can be flexible when you need to as well, like when it's ready for you. You know what I mean? When you're adjusting, be open in that way.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things too is if you're uncomfortable, within reason, okay? If you're uncomfortable, it's an opportunity to learn something. Like when you hear something and you're like, okay, no, this is making me uncomfortable. Most of the time there's something there that needs to be explored. And I think what you said was so beautiful about the struggle of identity. And I mean, that's something that I struggled with forever. And then, that does seep into the way that you practice magic and the way you relate to other people. And I think that's what I would have to agree with you. I think that's what almost all of us are doing within this spiritual, witchy space, is just trying to figure out who we are and how we tap into that, how we relate to deity. I also am very much somebody who, I don't know, when it comes to gender and deity, I get very fucked up in my head because again, perception. I'm like, if it ain't a woman. Now, it wasn't until probably a couple years ago that I started incorporating Jesus into my practice, which was kind of shocking to me. And then this, a couple of the saints that I work with have masculine energy, but I approach it in a very interesting way because I'm never subservient, and that's what I like about saint work. I'm like, this is what I want. This is what you'll get. Thank you. Nice doing business with you. Have a nice day.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. As of now, my experience, I think that, and again, gender is something that is very well aware. It's a social construct, but I know Jesus as a man because it was presented as a man. Historically, is known as a man. So cool. He is a dude, I guess. That's cool. Perfect. If in my experience in a ritual, a particular deity, it presents themselves in a different way, then I'm taking that as my experience with it.
Yes.
And I will enjoy the process and be like, okay, cool. So now that you are presenting yourself in this cool way, let me utilize this example. With Hecate, for example, I had the opportunity to briefly work with Hecate, and Hecate was such a interesting experience with me with the divine feminine, because it was a very dark divine feminine experience. It was not I'm coming out of Christianity and I'm experiencing a Virgin Mary type of embracing, loving mother figure to be taking me by the hand and diving to witchcraft, and then I see this badass deity be like, I'm not going to fucking cuddle you. You need to start working your shit. Let's sit down and meditate and do path work, and I will protect you. But you have to be aware that you have to go through the experience. And I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm your loving mother. This is not me. You want that? Go to Mary, to the witchcraft with Mary, And it was eye-opening, and we get to see the different names that Hecate received across culture and history, and one of them is actually Brimo, which is a very dark presentation of Hecate, very, very dark, to the point that it's terrifying. I think that Brimo even does mean terrifying, but don't quote me on that. What I'm trying to say is that even the way that we perceive a deity across culture, and it might have a societal impact, because that's the way that we are programmed. And that's okay, I think that the cool thing of where we are now with witchcraft is that we can break out of that. And we can, in the best way that I can notice those changes is by writing it down. Because this memory, as you can notice, I go all over the place. If I don't write that down, I will not notice it. Even my experiences, there are points that I will forget about them. So
everyone thinks they won't, by the way, but we all do.
We all do. You say something, Brittany, someone says, oh, remember when you were telling that story about, I'm like, oh, I forgot that even happened.
Immediately. The first thing that I asked you both was like, can I get your name so I can write it down here on my notebook? Because I know how I work. It's self-awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm terrible with that. It just, time passes and more experiences happen, and it becomes more, I don't know if it's more difficult, but the memory becomes passive, and I'm not someone who necessarily goes through. If I'm recording a dream or an experience, I record it. And if I keep delving into that and pushing that and trying to go further into whatever communication that is, you go on that journey, you record it, you go. And then eventually it either comes to some sense of completion, or you just kind of fade away into something else, on to the next thing. And then it's like, oh, that memory is not readily available to you anymore. So to be able to go back and be like, oh, okay, I've kind of let this go. Maybe I want to delve back into that. Or what was that experience about? Or oh, that experience, that communication is resonating with me now. I get what that was trying to tell me. That makes sense. So there are definitely real benefits to doing that if you can remember to do it. You can remember to do it, or remember to look at it. That, for me, that's the thing. Remember to look at it. Go back to it.
That's it.
Yeah. I will. I guess that I will say I keep going. I keep going back to that. But I will say, the first, identify who you are in your practice and what type of practice you want to pursue. Keep a track of it in whichever way that it works for you. If you want to make a holy ink out of 3 different pigments and bless it and consecrate it for a whole fucking year, whatever, cool, you do you, boo. Like whatever works for you. Me, I will say with my pencils that if I made a mistake, I can fix, and I will have my 37 notebooks and counting, plus Notion and Tumblr and TikTok and Instagram, and like whatever works for you. Practicality. And and if you are a person with a disability, you cannot see well. Are you gonna write? Just make a memo, audio,
Right.
whatever works for you. I mean, writing is something that is relatively recent, and a lot oral tradition was a big thing. You like to talk, and talking is the way that you learn. Find a body that you can talk about magic and go back and forth until it finally fits.
Well, and that's a very good point that you make, because I know through communication with other witches, with just having conversation, okay, I want to try this. What do I do this? Or, outline saying, hey, I found this thing. Why don't we try this? Why don't we do that?
Yes.
When you can collaborate in that way, not in a professional way, not in a, media way, and just a friendship level, witches coming together to create something. There's something very special about that. And it's like, okay, getting to collaborate in that oral aspect is always very pleasurable. Right.
Yeah. I in my experience, my practice fully changed after I started doing 3 things. Working with my ancestor, full change. After I got an instructor, full change. And after I got I won't say a community, even though I would love to work with a community here in Orlando. I would love to build a community, minority focused, where we all sit down and talk about witchcraft. But when I finally found friends that I can talk about witchcraft, and when I ask them, how do you do this? Well, I do it this way. Let's exchange recipes and see what it works. And as you say, Justin, like, oh, this shit doesn't fucking work. I will do my shit as I do it, and I need my money. I won't do it this way if I'm not gonna get my coins. Yeah, but definitely ancestor work. My experience. I'm not teaching anyone anything. My experience, ancestor work, number 1. Finding an instructor, which I received a full class of the Black Book of Saint Cyprian, the Black School of Saint Cyprian with Jason Miller, life-changing, and finding my friends, my community, life-changing. I am a solitary practitioner, but I will say, as Sarah Mastro says, you need someone to call you out in your bullshit. When you are doing something that is not right, or you are doing something that needs to be called out, we witches tend to fall in that, well, I can manifest everything. I can do everything. I'm almost a deity. And that's when you fall. And you need someone to call you out.
That is so true. I hate that mentality of I have all the answers. You don't.
My son is currently going through that. He's 13. I actually distinctly remember when I was 12 years old having the thought, you know what? I'm pretty sure I've learned everything now. Sorry, if you ever think you've learned everything, it's a sign that you're desperately ignorant. Because the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. That's the thing. Once you really start to study anything, you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to know. Like, I'm never going to be a master. Like, it's just too much, especially with witchcraft.
Especially with witchcraft. Every single time that you think that you are in that place, pull a tarot card. Most likely you're going to get the tower or the death or whatever. Like, bitch, no.
It's true. You know, the journey is a journey. You know, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And you just got to keep going. And sometimes that boredom, that stagnation is just an indicant that it's time to switch things up, bring some new energy and try something new. You know, nothing lasts forever. Like some stuff, eventually you just lay down and you pick something else up and you keep moving on.
And that's
you know, there's no ascension that happens with witchcraft, I don't think. You know, we're always learning, always trying to grow, collaborate. And that's really the beauty of it, I think. There's not, you know, the release of dogma and expectation can be freeing and intimidating. And that's a beautiful duality to experience.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I will add to that, not only freeing the dogma, and I'm sorry, I'm sorry if I talking too much shit, but
you talk just the right amount of shit. Keep talking.
You do.
I'm so sorry. I'm muting myself. No, on top of adding that, you know, releasing yourself from the dogma, I do think that we also witches, we need to enjoy normal real life, if that makes sense. I think that is great looking for illumination and ascending. But I do not think that any extreme is good. I do think that a good weekend without reading any book or doing rituals is going to be good for you. Sitting down, playing video games, or going and dance, you know, or drinks if you drink, or whatever you do, keep it balanced, because it's easy to get lost in the sauce. It's easy. Very, very easy.
I would agree with that 100%. Don't get lost in the sauce. That is the message to tonight's episode.
Let's get a t-shirt.
Motto we walked away with. Right. Yes.
Lost in the sauce. Well, it is 10:32, so we're going to wrap up. I want to thank Alvine for co-hosting this episode, and thank you so much to AB for joining us. I had a lot of fun. This was a really good, enlightening conversation. I think everybody else really enjoyed it as well. The chat was kind of going crazy there for a while. So that is it for tonight's episode. Thank you guys so much for coming. We will be back. I got to check the date. February 10th will be the next episode of Wine and Witchcraft. It'll be a broomstick some bullshit. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Go and check out AB's channel. Show him some love. He will be back soon with some more content. And yeah, y'all have a good night and be safe. Bye.
Bye-bye. Adios.